toddler throwing is for sure a nerve-wracking phase. You are worried about the TV, about the picture frames, but most importantly that they don't clobber their friend or their sibling over the head with a wooden train. Today we are talking about what to do when our child is in a phase of throwing and how to move them out of that phase. Now, if you are indoors in the winter and feeling like the space is just becoming claustrophobic with all the movement that your child needs, go and grab the freebie that I have linked below. It's all about setting up movement spaces within your home. You don't need to have a full climbing wall or anything like that. These are more accessible and more pack-awayable ideas that could make your winter with your toddler a lot easier. So go and grab that below. Okay, so first of all, let's kind of unpack why toddlers throw, apart from the fact that it's incredibly interesting, right? There's a lot of learning that is taking place when you are able to lift something and release it with like a bit of movement and a bit of power, so it actually flings on something. And if it hits something and knocks something, I mean, this is incredibly interesting for young children. They are also at that age that they are developing a lot of that coordination. So it's kind of a drive that children have, just like when they were babies and they used to hold a block and not be able to release it, and then they learned to release it, and everything about releasing things became very interesting. Now at this toddler age, throwing can be one of those things that just is very interesting for children. They also don't really have the actual motor coordination as well as the impulse control, so that like brain development piece that understands to stop. So often what happens in families, well, it certainly happened many a time within mine, is you see your child pick something up, you like see that movement coming and you say stop, and they don't stop, and it feels like they deliberately disobeyed you or disrespected you. But in terms of their development, it's actually very, very difficult, or more towards impossible, for a child mid-throw to actually be able to stop because of that coordination as well as the impulse control. So the first tip is to always, if you're in the moment of your child wanting to throw, don't use a verbal boundary. You want to be using a physical boundary. So instead of just saying to them, don't throw or stop that, get in the way. Get in the way of either the thing that is being thrown, or get behind and, physically stop them. This doesn't have to be excessive. You don't have to like clamor onto them. It doesn't have to be such a big hysterical act. But yeah, as parents, especially in the toddler years, we don't have to be scared of putting a physical boundary in place. So when you are noticing or getting that feeling that they're about to throw something, just get yourself physically present in the situation. So the first tip is to keep a physical boundary, not a verbal boundary. So how do we actually support our child out of this phase? The first thing is that we want to, not in the moment, outside of the moment, so in calm, regular time, talk about throwing. Talk about the fact that if we throw something heavy, it actually can knock something and break something. This might seem super obvious, and it might be that they've even had a mild experience of this already, but we want to be crystal clear as we train our children in what like natural consequences are and how the world works. This is something that they're still developing. So talk about it. Maybe you even want to take a piece of paper and draw. Your child is a little stick figure there with something in their hand, and then on the other side a vase or a TV or whatever that's broken because it got something thrown at, or maybe another child with a boo-boo on their head. But really making crystal clear, so making the things that are unknown and they're curious about really crystal clear to them about throwing. Then the second thing that we want to do is start practicing impulse control. Now, this only really comes on board around age 4 to 5, but we want to be giving our children a lot of time to practice this action, because it's setting up the scaffolding for when that actual brain network will come into play. So one of the ways that we can do this is by playing stop-start games. So we like to do like tickles and then stop, clapping and then stop. So any kind of dancing and then freeze, stuck in the mud, all of these kind of things are practicing that skill of stopping in the moment, which toddlers don't have yet. And then the third one is actually practicing this out through play. Now, as I said, like there's a lot of the motor coordination things that are happening that it makes throwing very interesting, but there's also a lot of playfulness happening within this. So this actually does fall into what we call schematic play. There are certain urges that children have at certain ages, whether it be watching something move, which is definitely involved in throwing, or whether it be scooping and putting things. They have an urge to hide things in things and then lift them out. And our children kind of move through phases of each of these schemas. So that's why often when they are in that throwing phase, it really feels like they're finding anything and everything that they can throw and they're throwing it. And it's because they are just really playfully exploring this action of throwing, as well as developing all the things that are involved in the motor coordination of getting an object thrown. So some of the throwing play that we love to do are firstly balls. Balls are wonderful for visual development, for visual motor development, for physical development. They're just a great activity, and kids should be getting regular ball play exposure. So go out to the park with a ball. If you have a younger child, you're wanting the ball to be light, so it's not going to actually hit them, and slightly bigger. You can play throwing, you can play kicking, you can play chasing, you can play batting, you can play throwing into something. That's actually something that toddlers learn before they're really getting the catch down. So throwing into a laundry basket or something like that. And I want to hear from you. What are some of the ways that you do throwing in your house? Do you have a basketball hoop, or do you have a laundry basket that you throw things into? What are the ways that you are using throwing in your house regularly in safe ways that are age appropriate and really support the schema? Let me know down below in the comments. Now, if you are in this phase with throwing, you may be also, or soon to be, in a phase of hitting, which is again one of these things that our toddlers move through. So I have a video on the screen now all about hitting and how we can support our children in that phase of development and really support all of the scaffolding that they need to stop hitting and to move through that. So I will see you over there.